You're listening to The Critical Thought, where we challenge our listeners to use critical thinking when examining the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Hi, this is Lady C, and I want to welcome you to The Critical Thought. In the upcoming episode, I'm going to be speaking to Ava. She is a fifth-generation Jehovah's Witness, born in fact, they go all the way back to the days of Rutherford. And so she wanted to come out and tell her story about what it was like, her family being in this organization, and how she came to the realization that this was not the truth. Not only that, but Ava appears to be the black sheep in her family because she's the only person that actually woke up to the real truth about the truth. So please join me in welcoming Ava to the program.
Hello.
Thank you so much, Ava, for being on the program. And, we have spoken several times, and I really got a chance to get to know you because, like all the information that you've shared with me about you and your family. And I just want to just have you talk to the audience a little bit about how your family goes back the times during Rutherford and coming into this religion and, what made them, become interested in this religion.
Well, in Germany, there is a lot of dissent because of the war going on. And my parents were children, small children during World War II. And even before that, my family, grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, felt a lot of unsettledness because of what was going on. And when the good news came to them, of course, they were in a situation where they wanted to, it sounded so good to them. And as the years went by, we were actually arrived in America through my grandmother. She came first. And I was 5 months old, and we continued to pick back up Jehovah's Witnesses teaching and started going back and get involved in the congregation there in upstate New York.
Interesting. So now you say that you didn't come to the United States until you were 5 months old. And I know that you weren't living during the time of the Holocaust.
Right.
Or you're old enough for that. So can you share with our audience any information that you have about what your family lived through with the Holocaust?
Yes, what I was told when I asked questions, now you have to realize most of the time they did not want to talk about it. So it was kind of like you had to really ask a lot of questions to get them to talk about it. And you can understand why they didn't want to relive the terrible moments. But what I understood from my grandmother is that her sisters and the aunts were in concentration camp, and an uncle, and because of being a Jehovah's Witness, so they were part of the Purple Triangle, and they had a really difficult time. One of my uncles, I've gotten this story just lately from one of my cousins, that one of my uncles was murdered by the Nazis for standing up for Jehovah's Witnesses. And I never got that story from my parents. So I can now see where there was so much, why they hung on so tightly to the thought of paradise and seeing their loved ones after death.
Yeah, that was so sad. And I'm so sorry to hear that about your family because, you hear so much about that throughout history. We studied about this in high school and different things like that. But I've never really spoken to anyone that was a Jehovah's Witness that actually had family that lived through that and actually lost someone during that time. And I could totally understand, why they didn't want to talk about it. Do you think that's the reason why they also don't want to maybe look into the religion to see whether or not it's really the truth? Because not so much that they want to see somebody in paradise, but because they would feel like they had died or lost family in vain?
I would say yes, exactly. I mean, after you've been doing this for so many years, I'm in my middle 60s, and if you've been doing something for over 60 years, and all of a sudden somebody tells you it's a lie. It's devastating. So sometimes you'd rather just believe what's in front of you than trying to figure out what happened in actuality.
Yeah, that is so true. And I understand that you have quite a big family as well, and it's like 7 girls and 1 boy, so that's 8 kids, right? And
Right.
of the 8 children, you're the only one that kinda woke up and saw that something wasn't right? What was that? Can you explain? You wanna talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I am right in the middle. I'm the fourth of the 8 children. And I first have to say, I love my sisters and brothers so much. I am not saying anything against them. I'm just stating my perspective on things. When I was 8, 10, something like that, and we would study at the book study about Lot story and the King Solomon story and all these violence, even in Noah's day, all the violence and the way it was portrayed that if you didn't follow Jehovah through the governing body, then that's what was going to happen to you. And it was terrifying to me. And the fact that you had to not associate with people from school or from work or anything like that. And there were such wonderful people, I felt like, in the world. Even I recognized back then that sometimes, I had a great congregation that I grew up with. I cannot say anything bad about the people there. We had a great family life as far as that goes, with activities with the other kids in the congregation. But sometimes the worldly kids were just like more in tune to how you felt. And you felt you could be yourself with them instead of trying to be perfect all the time. So it was that really, but all that just kind of blended together. And I just kept having that feeling of discontentment there.
Interesting. And you know what really, when we were talking the other day, and you were telling me about the experience with your friend, and you went to her house, you wanna kinda like, can you share that experience? I thought that was so cute.
Okay, well, I've always been pretty stubborn and independent anyway. So I had a friend in school, and I'm going to say maybe we were in 3rd or 4th grade, and she kept asking me to come over and stay and play with her. And she had asked me and asked me and asked me. And finally one day I'm like, okay, I'll just do it. And so I rode home with her on the bus, and we played all afternoon and had such a great time. And then her mother comes home and says, okay, were you going to eat dinner with us? And when were your parents going to pick you up? And I'm like, they don't know I'm here. And she was a little taken back, but she called my parents, and my father did come and get me. And it was a very weird ride home, because he really didn't even say much about it. And then my mother didn't either. But that was the kind of thing that I would do. I just kind of like ask for forgiveness rather than permission.
I love it. I love it. But you know what I really like about what you said was you acknowledge the fact that you like the kids at the Kingdom Hall,
Mhm.
but then you said, "But I got a chance to be myself with the other kids."
Mhm.
And so you got a chance to see both sides of the coin, which is
Mhm.
today we don't get that with these kids because now they're homeschooling, right?
Right, right,
And that's kinda terrible because you're taking the kids out of the environment, and I think that is on purpose because
right.
they don't want people
Oh,
to have
yes.
your experience, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's really sad, because now in my later years, many of my schoolmates I'm friends with, good friends with, and they, by homeschooling, they don't have that diversity at all. And a diversity of friends is such a wonderful thing. I really enjoy everybody's differences.
I like that because when you like when I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness as well, I also had friends, but what divided us so much was the fact that I couldn't do birthdays and holidays.
Hmm.
And I think that's what actually brings you together with people when you can share in those type of festivities.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it makes it a
Exactly.
little bit different. Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, was your father a witness?
No, my dad was not, but he was pretty supportive. And he wanted to get baptized, but he was a smoker. So
Mm,
he was not allowed to get baptized. But for taking care of 8 kids and being an orphan himself, I always had a high regard for him and the
yeah.
way that he parented and stuck with all of us girls.
I mean, well, coming from the German your German background and all the
Mhm,
things that your family had to endure, I can see that he probably saw that, his life that he came from
mhm.
and now the life he's in now, people generally do well with the life experiences, and they make decisions differently than someone who always had everything.
Right,
You know what I
right,
mean?
right.
So, yeah. But it sounds to me like your father may have been, very supportive. Like, in other words, he couldn't get baptized because of the smoking,
Mhm.
but he believed everything that they taught.
He right to his death, he believed it, yes. And, there was times when he would get kind of, like, jealous that my mom was always, gone because the witness religion takes a lot of time. And so there were times where, he wasn't so supportive, but, as I look through the years, generally, he was. He
Mhm.
was.
Well, when we had also talked about your mother, and I thought this was an interesting situation, during the time that she was living in Germany. This is before you
Mhm,
were born.
mhm.
And do you wanna kinda talk about how she had to survive during the Holocaust days? You wanna kinda talk about what you know about that?
Yes, yes. There is a term called kinder transport. And my mother, when she was very young, now this will be maybe 7 or 8, and I'm not positive about the ages. She was sent on a train to Austria, and it was under a program that the German children, lots of them Jews and then Jehovah's Witnesses, were sent out of the country so that they could be safe. And my mother was placed in a home of a well to do Austria family where she stayed with them and she would do, little housekeeping and mending and things like that. And it's hard to believe for an 18-year-old now, but that's what they did. And in they gave her room and board. They gave her. She had piano lessons. She got to enjoy the fine arts of Austria. She learned how to embroider and the finer of darning and things like that. So she gained something too. I can't figure out how my grandmother and my mother were reunited because at that time they had no cell phones, no email. If they sent a letter going from Germany to Austria, I can't imagine that was a quick thing. But they were reunited when my mom was in her tweens.
Awesome.
And that what I'd like to talk about with the kinder transport is I had gotten this book for my grandchildren, Nikki and Vera, and it talks about, I learned more about the kinder transport myself when it talked about an Englishman. His name was Nicholas Winston. So what he did is he went around and took all the names and photographs of the children so to get them out of the country. And they were transported to different places. He had gone ahead of time and kind of looked for the foster homes and then put them together. So he is definitely an unsung hero. I mean, that was a huge effort. How he pulled it off, I don't know. I can't even imagine without modern technology. But what a wonderful humanitarian effort. And that's something that really touches my heart when you see people go out of their way to be so kind and protective of others.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And that brings me to the part of the discussion that I wanna talk about with you
Mhm.
and how you told me that you were waking up, like, about 10 years old, and you noticed that about the watchtower and their humanitarian effort.
hmm
What did you notice about that when you were younger?
So what I realized when I was in probably around 10 is that there was no humanitarian efforts. I knew my classmates participated in all kinds of things that I was not allowed to, like the candy stripers and any kind of disaster that went on. You would see in the paper or on the news that people would help each other. And I did notice that they were a very inclusive group where they only helped those that were Jehovah's Witnesses and active in their congregations. And that conflicted with the story that I had with my mom, that she was sent to another country so that she could be safe by someone that she did not know. And not only her, but millions of other people. And so it just conflicted in my heart that it was not balanced at all, this love, just taking care of the one faith instead of other people. And we had definitely benefited from the help of other people many times. And the main thing is that these people were not Jehovah's Witnesses. These people were just good humanitarian people that had love in their heart and wanted to help others to just to live and not to suffer under the hands of what was going on in the war.
You are absolutely 100% spot on, because your story is so heartwarming. And for you to have been a critical thinker at the age of 10 years old is impressive, because you were willing to go and let your mind go there and think about these things, the stories that you were told about your parents and your mother's, especially your mother being able to escape as a youngster at the hands of somebody that wasn't even a Jehovah's Witness. So the question is, what were Jehovah's Witnesses doing to help their members besides getting a watchtower smuggled into their hands? But these are the kind of things that people don't want to really think about. And everyone knows that the only business of the watchtower is to get people more interested in their agenda. And the only thing they want to do is say, look, come to the meeting, go out in service, knock on doors, bring more people in, and later on you will have a life. That's it.
Right. In paradise.
Exactly.
And see your loved ones.
Right. So now, what about as time went on and you began to, go to school? What happened with your decisions and choices about furthering your education? You want to tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, when I was convinced that 1975 Armageddon was going to come, and I really wanted to quit school, and I could not because my brother-in-law convinced my parents not to let me. And it's a really good thing. Accolades to him. But I graduated in 76. So from there, I actually took business courses in high school, all the business courses I could. And from there, just off of the courses I took in school, I was able to right away get jobs as like a payroll clerk, inventory control clerk. And with each job, I would try to further improve my education. I took night classes in finances and accounting. And I always made sure that with every job I had, I reached out for something that was even better and was better pay.
That's good. Now, in the Jehovah's Witness religion, nobody can be improving anything. In fact, you were supposed to have a squeegee and a bucket. You weren't supposed to be doing that with no finances. So, how did you get past all that?
Okay. Well, actually, I did have a squeegee and a bucket too before I graduated. I took jobs as house cleaning, and then I got asked to work for welfare, cleaning welfare recipients' homes. So that was not an easy task, I'll tell you. I had to have a lot of fortitude to get through that. But I saved enough money to buy a car. So by the time I graduated, I had a car and I had a job. So I am so happy that I actually did it that way. Now, actually, I did get baptized. I think I was between 13 and 14, but I did get baptized because my sister was getting baptized and she was just younger than me. And I couldn't have her get baptized before me. So that's why I got baptized. I didn't feel anything. And I guess that's why I don't even remember the date.
That's okay. That's a long time ago, right?
Very.
Very long time ago. So that's okay.
Lots has happened.
Especially since we know it doesn't mean anything with the Jehovah's Witnesses anyway, since
Right.
you got baptized into the organization. But but anyway, so I really like your story because you seem like you did a lot of foreplanning. Like, okay, I gotta go work this job over here. I gotta get my car. When I graduate, I don't have to depend on somebody else. I did the hard grunt work first. Now I realize that I need to get a job, and every time I get a job, I got to get a better one. I love it. I mean, because you realize that at some point you're going to take care of yourself.
Right. Right.
And so how did the witnesses feel about this? Were you still a witness when you were doing all this, going to school and stuff? What was going on at this point?
Well, because I was so independent and stubborn in my thought, I just faded out more or less. I moved away from home right away with a couple of other girls that were actually faders also. And so that's kind of how that went. I always felt guilty though, because my mom would ask me, was I going to the meeting? Was I going to the convention? And, I had to skirt around it, and it really made me feel bad about always, not being very truthful about all that. But I just couldn't do it. It was just sitting and listening to those talks and the Watchtower study. And I remember being young and saying, none of this makes sense to me. Maybe I'm not smart enough. And so I just kept thinking, it doesn't make sense. And as I got older, it still didn't make sense. So I didn't see the point in it. I didn't have any faith in it at all.
Yeah. And you know what? When you say what you're saying, a lot of people are at the Kingdom Hall feeling that way. And you don't know why you're there, but they just tell you that this is where you have to be. And they kind of like make you phobic to the point where if you're not there, you're going to die at Armageddon, you're going to be destroyed forever and things like that. And so it's almost like it's a good luck charm. People are going because they feel like they have to be there. And I think the number one reason why people are there is because they're going to cut you off from everyone that you ever knew. And that even your loved ones, people that your mom and dad, your siblings and stuff like that. And I understand that that's the situation that you're in right now. How are you handling the shunning? You want to talk about how long you've been shunned and how you are handling that situation right now?
It has actually been since 2004 because of an incident that happened with my son he was young, a young teenager. And I felt that the elders really did not handle that with love at all. And it was almost like they were trying to teach him a lesson, or the other kids in the congregation a lesson, because he was a really wonderful young man. And it just broke my heart to see that. And, when they decided that he would no longer be part of the congregation, it really just was like a knife was stabbed in my heart. And only because I was the one that called the brothers to ask for help. I wanted to know, what I should do. I just thought it was like just a small parenting thing that I needed to develop. But once he was ousted from the congregation, I could not fathom that I would shun him. Never. I would never, because it was not even a big deal. So once my family then started shunning him, that just like twisted the knife. And then right before that, I had tried to go to the elders, and they would tell me that I asked too many questions, because I read up on it, and they just were like, well, you're asking too many questions, Eva. Just rely on Jehovah. He will work it all out. And I relied on Jehovah for 1975 to be the end of the world. I was not going to wait any longer for this minor incident to be rectified, because I knew that would never happen. I had no faith that was ever going to happen. And that's when I just never went back to the Kingdom Hall. And I sat down and in a turmoil of emotions, wrote a letter to my family and FedExed every one of them a copy of the letter. And we haven't talked since, except for the funerals of the passing of my mom and dad.
Oh my goodness, that was such a terrible experience you have to go through, because we recently talked about this with some friends of ours about something that happened with their kids, and how the Jehovah's Witnesses look at everything that we do or children do, and they don't let kids be kids,
Mm-hmm.
and how other children that are not witnesses can get in trouble, and the parents understand, oh, these are just kids, and they understand that, that's just a fleeting moment or something. But in the Jehovah's Witness religion, it's not treated like that. And people,
Right.
your lives are just turned upside down. And to have to be shunned by people the way in which your family was shunned because of your son and the minor incident that happened with him. And by the way, people, this had nothing to do with fornication.
No,
That's what
no,
the thing about it is, because we people are thinking, oh, he probably got in trouble with somebody with
no,
fornication. It's like, no,
no.
it wasn't even that, right?
It was very minor.
It was very minor. And so it's like, here you are in this tribunal with these three men. And a lot of people don't realize that when a judicial case comes before a body of elders, you are at the mercy of these three men that might not show mercy, and they ain't got no business having that on their plate to even show you mercy. But it's like they determine the outcome of the situation.
Right.
And so then you were saying that you wrote a letter
Mm-hmm.
to your family.
Right.
Now, let me ask you a question. Now, when you wrote that letter, how long did it take them before they stopped talking to you totally?
Immediately.
See, right. So
Mm-hmm.
do you think that if you had, like, I know you were on your journey at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, hindsight is 2020, but how would you have handled that differently if you know what you knew now about the situation?
I would have handled that completely differently. I would have sat on that for a while until push came to shove, because we don't have to be accountable to these elders. We don't have to be accountable to other people. We don't have to tell them all of our business. I would have just sat on that because they were going to shun him anyways. And as far as that goes, I would have at least had some kind of relationship with my family, with my mom, and my sons, really suffered of not having their Omi. That's what a German grandmother's called. And if I had not left, I would have never had the wonderful relationship I have now with my grandchildren, with my sons, because that shunning just cuts you off.
I like what you said about you ain't got to tell your business. And
Mhm.
even with your son, when your son found himself in a situation and the first thing you did was call the elders, it was like, wow, hindsight, like I said, is 2020. And you
Yes.
probably would not have done that either.
No, definitely not. No, for me, hindsight's 20/30. Yeah, there's a lot of hindsight going on.
Yeah, it's true. Now you said that, like, shortly after you left, you were telling me that your friend that had also left, and what did she share with you? She shared information with you?
Yes. She, Tammy and I had been friends. We were coworkers who found out we were Jehovah's Witnesses, and we became fast friends, and we became roommates. And when I was going through this, she went through it in her own life before me leaving the religion. But when I was going through this with my son, she gave me a golden nugget, the crisis of conscience, and by Raymond France. And I still get chills. I was only in that little pamphlet, because it was a small pamphlet. I was only in that pamphlet 2 pages in, and I was like, I have got my confirmation.
Yeah. So you had because I know I got the book. So you had a pamphlet? He had a pamphlet out?
Yeah. There was it was just, and actually it's on, you can get it on YouTube, a copy of it. I seen it through one of a post that somebody said, here's the link that
Okay.
you can get that little one.
Okay, I got you. Well, you know what? I think it's interesting too because it's like a lot of people, you're going to the Kingdom Hall, and like you had stated earlier, you're going there. It makes no sense. What are we doing? As
Mhm,
Jehovah's Witnesses, they teach you to have tunnel vision. You can't
mhm,
go to school. They don't want you doing outside extracurricular activities, and your life becomes robotic.
mhm,
And you're just existing. And
mhm,
then one day something happens like with you that
mhm,
wakes you totally up. You got like this earthquake effect happening in
mhm,
your life, and you're like saying, "This is like a bombshell," right?
mhm,
Point, well, let me just see what's going on. Then somebody gives you something. So, like when your friend Tammy, when she gave you that pamphlet,
mhm.
you didn't have any reserve about reading it. But if you
No.
were that Jehovah's Witness that was like trying to do what was right, trying to go out and field service, not listening to what people had to say, you wouldn't even have read that.
Right, right. I would have refused, said no, thank you.
Exactly. But then you wake up and then you have a whole new world of opportunity open to
Mhm,
you.
mhm,
Like, they didn't encourage us to go to theme parks. They didn't encourage us to go to, mountain climbing and skiing and things. Well, that's to me, life is a gift,
mhm,
and the gift is the opportunity for you to indulge in the different things that's here on this earth. If
mhm,
God didn't want us to have these things, we would get up in the morning and just see black and white.
mhm. I have a block about waiting until something happens. We have to really enjoy our life now. We have to enjoy the nature, what the Creator has gifted us with, the beauty in everything in the world, including the people. Um, there is so much to be thankful for, and for me, I consider myself a Christian, but I do not. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. And to me, it's okay. But I do know that I do have a strong conviction that we have a creator and that we are internally grateful to him. But what he wanted for us, he wants us to be happy. Jesus and it plainly tells you in the Bible that Jesus wanted us to be happy. He didn't want us to be like robots. He wants us to be happy, and I'm going to follow that example.
I agree.
One thing I really enjoy is I did not know the Bible as a in the religion. I didn't know the Bible, and one thing I'm really enjoying now is having a Bible study every Friday with a wonderful teacher, and she is such a beautiful person, and we don't study anything but the Bible, and I feel like I'm growing for appreciation more of the Bible than I ever had. I feel like there's so much I didn't know. So I mean, I I was so ignorant for the Bible, and I feel like that has helped me so much. And meeting other people that feel the same way has been a really beautiful experience. And as much as I so miss my sisters and my brother, I have to say, at this point, we have nothing in common. So, if we weren't sisters and brothers, I don't even know if we would be friends because we have nothing in common. But these people that I'm meeting now that have come out of it are so full of love and compassion and humanitarian things that they do, that it's really such a wonderful upgrade, a wonderful upgrade. I would like to add that one of the greatest things that I have done after a divorce, I took a coworker had suggested I go to a divorce recovery class. Okay, so it was held at a church, and I went through this divorce recovery class, and it was so beneficial. Now, and they had told me for every 5 years you've been married, you need a year to heal before you go on to another relationship permanent relationship. That was such good advice. And this has only been in the last year, because really once I left for good, the religion, I was kind of in limbo for many, many years until last year. Last year is the first time I actually went on to the internet and then found some YouTube and then some platforms on Facebook. But through that, I was introduced to a spiritual abuse recovery class that I took. Oh my goodness. I cannot tell you how wonderful that freed me completely. So I highly recommend a spiritual abuse recovery class to anyone who has still some angst. It will totally clear your mind as to how you can get rid of all that noise in your mind. It was wonderful. David Henke wrote the book, and he facilitated the study. It was wonderful.
Okay, I'll make sure I put the link to that in the description if you can email it to me. So Ava, do you have any further comments that you would like to share with the audience?
Yes, I would love to share that I am involved in a nonprofit organization. It's called Witnessing Freedom Foundation, and we'll have the link at the bottom. This is a foundation where we started the beginning of this year. We are actively working towards setting up a movie about those exiting high control religions and what their experiences are, what help they can get. It's one of my main things for myself is I have become so aware of the young people that leave and their parents just kick them out of the house. My heart is so passionate about helping young people. I mean, all people, but especially the young ones. They need to be loved, unconditional love. That is my main passion in love in the world. So I would recommend or ask you to look up this foundation and perhaps in any way give it an accolade, or if you can help in some way or volunteer in some way, we would be so happy for that. We are looking to this documentary is hopefully going to turn into something like a Netflix movie, which costs a lot of money. So we're really trying to put our resources together and get in touch with people that can help us. For us, members of the foundation, we don't care about getting any money out of this. We are just doing it for the high control religions and to support them.
I think that's a really good initiative to take this undertaking, because there are so many people that don't realize that they need this. And I think it's not just for Jehovah's Witnesses either.
Right.
Because there's just people in general that are just being rejected by their family.
Right.
So we'll make sure. So what's the name of the organization again?
It's Witnessing Freedom Foundation.
And the website for Witnessing Freedom is www.witnessingfreedom.org. So we'll make sure we put the link to this website in the description below.
We thank you.
You're so welcome, because the more resources that we have on this, the better. So yeah, I am so glad that you were able to come on the program and share your experience, because so many people may be in the same situation that you're in, where you just don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. And I feel like when you were talking about you're going to the meetings and it makes no sense, how do you rectify or justify me not being here, because you don't know anything else until you got that pamphlet, Crisis of Conscience. Mm-hmm. So and I always just tell people we also have resources on our website, www.exjwcriticalthinker.com, and we have a link to a resource link where people can go get that book as well. So anyway, so Ava, thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Lady C.
Oh, you're welcome. It's always a pleasure. And so I want to thank everyone for being in the audience, and we will see you on the next episode. Thank you for being in our audience.
This program was sponsored by Critical Thinkers.